what do you think it is about the hero that fascinates?
It would depend on the hero. It's not heroes, it's individual hero. I mean, there are certain people I wouldn't ever want to write about. People would consider Winston Churchill a hero. He doesn't interest me. People
Mm.
would consider there's any number of war figures from the Second World War. Audie Murphy, who became a movie star in the 50s. He was a guy who was a heroic figure. Sergeant York from the First World War. They are
But
considered.
is history a parade of heroes? I mean, you joke rather ironically, or Zeus slash Danny jokes that perhaps call me the last great defender of the great man of history theory. Like, is that what you're doing? Are you defending sort of the great man of history?
Well, I think there are great men, great movers, but I think it's also a combination of the tides of history too. I mean, if you removed Adolf Hitler, we probably would still have had a major what? Maybe it would have come 10 years later, 1951 or 52. It might not have coalesced as quickly without as charismatic a figure. If you remove Stalin and if Trotsky had taken over, would he have been that much better realistically? I mean, I
But
think
what do great figures, heroes, as it were, sort of make manifest? I mean, like, is it fate? I mean, because again, that you grapple with this concept of fate in so much of your work, Dan.
well, yeah, I don't believe in fate. And the biggest divide of that would be the difference between art and science. Science is the living embodiment of the forces of history and nature, uh, over being greater than any individual. Because, like I said, if you remove Darwin, you still got Wallace. You remove Newton, you still got Leibniz, who makes calculus, and so on and so forth. But if you remove Kubrick, you'll never have 2001. If you remove Melville, no Moby Dick. If you remove Shakespeare, pick one of his top 5 or 6 plays.
Yeah.
You won't have that. So, in reality, history is a mixture of the both. I mean, that's just obvious. There are people who wrench away. Without Walt Whitman, you would not have had a lot of the poets of. You wouldn't have had the Eliots and the Pounds to react against him. You wouldn't have had Dickinson getting published probably. But you would have had, but maybe later on, it might have taken another 50 or so years. You would have had poetry flowering and then collapsing on itself again, as it has in the last 40 years. Um,
So
but
perhaps the real theme or the real subject is history.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you're dealing with myth, history, in a sense, almost always becomes myth. I mean, Douglas MacArthur was a real person, but his "I shall return" is as mythic a statement as you could make. And he wasn't himself a great general. He wasn't a terrible general as people have, but he's not
Mm.
in a league with the top 20 generals all time. He was just a guy who was a good politician within armed clothes. But again, "I shall return." I mean, that's as mythic a statement as any military leader has ever made.
Mm. But yeah, I mean, perhaps history as well. Kind of, we can also we were talking about sort of the ancient conceptualizations of history as sort of as a sort of shall we say, sort of a post-lapsarian kind of thing, a thing of sort of decreasing greatness, and sort of modern history as something which is progressive, progressive temporality. I mean, but perhaps we're caught between these ideas of cyclic and linear history as well. I mean, what do you? I mean, is history something that you think of as linear, or is it something that where we see, or are we going to see things coming around again and again forever? Is it continuity, or is it continuity with disruption?
I think history is like a coil. The coil progresses, but not as fast as it would if it was just a straight pipe. Things go around and around, and right now we're at a low ebb here in the U.S. and certainly probably the world with global warming. Figures like Putin and the Chinese communists still in charge. People like the Trumps and the Bidens, who are feckless idiots in Biden, and active agents of idiocy in Trump. But I mean, I think you will come around.
That's a very interesting thing, and I've had conversations myself with people where they're talking about sort of history as a spiral. That's very a coil, you said.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because you have a compressor coil, things move forward, but they don't move as fast. I think it was Carl Sagan in Cosmos who opined something like, imagine if, I forget, was it the Persians who sacked the library at Alexandria? Was it the Persians who did it? I'm not certain. But when the sack of the library of Alexandria, and something like, was it 60,000 or 600,000 scrolls were lost? Not only the art, but in the ancient world, there were certain cultures that were able to make batteries that could last almost as long as batteries made 100 years ago. Imagine, would we be out in the stars now if whoever barbarians or Persians or whoever it was, the Phoenicians, I don't know, who sacked the Library of Alexandria, if they hadn't sacked that, would we be 500 years further along in our process? Would the people in 1500 be like us? Would they have had cell phones in 1522? Who knows?
So like enlightenment, but also counter enlightenment, iconoclasm, as it were.
Yeah, unless you're one of those people who believe that there was that the Middle Ages never happened. You ever hear that theory about some people think that from the year 624 to like 987 never really happened or something. People come up with all of these Boltzmann brain.
Yeah, all this
is
weird
the Boltzmann
sort of
brain
crypto
approach.
calendar stuff.
But